There are stories that don't make the headlines, cases that are never fully explained, and things that don't stay buried. The kind of stories people don't talk about because they can't. But you found them anyway. This is Studio Sinister.
Tonight, we are going into the woods. Not the postcard version. Not the hiking trail with a map kiosk, a wooden bench, and a family taking pictures in matching sweatshirts. We are going deeper than that. We are going into the kind of woods where the road ends, where the flashlight beam gets swallowed, where your own breathing starts to sound too loud, and where something can stand 20 yards away from you and still remain just outside the firelight. According to the United States Forest Service, the Daniel Boone National Forest stretches across 21 counties in eastern Kentucky, covering more than 708,000 acres of national forest land inside a 2.1 million acre proclamation boundary. It is a place of cliffs, ridges, hollers, trails, caves, and old Appalachian silence. In Iowa, near Volga, the land opens into cold fields, draws, old farmhouses, and the Volga River State Recreation Area, a region the Iowa Department of Natural Resources describes as year-round outdoor country, with a history tied to big plans, recreation, and rugged terrain. And in Alaska, near Dillingham and the Bristol Bay region, the wilderness stops being scenery and becomes something else entirely. Fred Roll, a Kuriong Tribal Council member from Dillingham, runs Subarctic Alaska Sasquatch, a site dedicated to documenting what Alaskan Native communities have long called the Hairy Man. 3 places, 3 witnesses, 3 different names: Dogman, Sasquatch, Hairy Man. But in every story, the warning is the same. Something is out there. And sometimes it comes close enough for you to smell its breath.
Story 1: Survival in Daniel Boone National Forest, a Kentucky Dogman story.
It is October 1st, 2003, opening night of hunting season. Eastern Kentucky is cooling down into fall. The hardwoods are shifting colors. Oak leaves are beginning to dry at the edges. The nights are getting longer, and the ridges of the Appalachian foothills are turning black earlier than they did just a few weeks before. This is coon hunting country. For people who did not grow up around it, coon hunting might sound simple. You take hounds into the woods at night. They pick up the scent of a raccoon. They run it, trail it, push it, until that raccoon climbs a tree. Then the dogs stay at the base of that tree and bark until the hunter gets there. But to the people who live it, it is more than a sport. It is tradition. It is dogs, bloodlines, training, cold nights, mud, briars, and the kind of trust between a hunter and his hound that cannot be faked. Kyle was 15 years old that night. He had grown up in the foothills near Daniel Boone National Forest. He knew hard work young. He dug ginseng, yellow root, and bloodroot. He trapped bait. He caught turtles. He worked tobacco fields. He spent time with his grandfather, his pawpaw, learning the woods the way some kids learn video games. And he trusted himself out there. He had reason to. His family carried a hard backbone. His great-grandfather served in World War I. His grandfather had been a prisoner of war during the Battle of the Bulge. His father served during Desert Storm. Kyle came from people who endured things. But nothing in that bloodline prepared him for what stepped out from beneath that oak tree. That night, Kyle and his grandfather drove about 6 miles into the forest. They went as far as the road would allow. Beyond that point, it was foot travel only. Kyle had 2 dogs with him. Bo was a 14-month-old red-tick coonhound. Young, still learning, a good dog, but not fully tested. And then there was old Jake. Jake was a Treen Walker coonhound, but he was enormous for the breed, around 120 pounds, broad-chested, powerful. Kyle described him as the kind of dog that did not surrender a tree. If Jake had a raccoon treed and coyotes came in, Jake did not run, Jake fought. On this night, Jake and Bo struck a track quickly. Within 20 minutes, the dogs were running hard. Then they went over a cliff and started treeing. Kyle's grandfather stayed back at the truck because of his health. Kyle took a radio, a rifle, and started walking alone toward the sound of his dogs. Then the coyotes started up. Not one, a pack. 7 or 8 of them. Their yips and howls came through the timber, closing in on the barking hounds. Kyle knew what was happening before he saw it. The coyotes heard the dogs. They were coming in to test them, maybe kill them. Then Bo started screaming, not barking, screaming. That high, broken yelp a dog makes when fear gets into its bones. Bo broke away and disappeared into the dark, but Jake stayed. Jake stayed at that tree. Kyle pushed faster through the woods, heart pounding, rifle in hand, trying to get there before the coyotes tore into his old dog. Then the sound changed. The fight shifted. Kyle heard chaos in the leaves, growling, snapping, bodies hitting the ground. And then, strangely, it sounded like the dogs were winning. Kyle thought maybe Bo had come back. He came up with his light and saw Jake with a coyote locked in his jaws. Jake had it by the throat. When the flashlight hit, the coyote broke loose and ran. The rest of the pack scattered. For 1 second, it looked like the worst was over. Kyle moved toward Jake to check him. That is when he heard something behind a massive oak tree. A wet sound. A choking sound. Like something trying to breathe through blood. Kyle rounded the tree expecting to see Bo. Instead, he saw something on all fours with a 50-pound coyote hanging from its mouth. The coyote's body was not even touching the ground. The thing was huge. Charcoal gray, built like a nightmare version of a dog, but wrong in every way that matters. Then it dropped the coyote and stood up. Kyle described it rising slowly, almost like an old man pushing himself up from a chair. When it reached its full height, it was nearly 7 feet tall. Its chest looked muscular, almost human. Its abdomen was defined. Its arms hung with terrible length. Its hands were not paws. They were hands with long fingers. And its eyes were pitch black. Not glowing, not reflecting. Black. Like 2 holes cut into the face of something that should not exist. Blood covered its muzzle. For a moment, Kyle and the creature stood there looking at each other. Then it took 1 step. Then another. Then another. Kyle ran. He ran with the kind of terror that does not leave room for thought. Behind him, he could feel it coming. He could not hear heavy breathing. He could not hear clumsy crashing. That may be the worst part. Something that big should have sounded big. But it moved with control. Then Jake hit. Old Jake launched himself into the creature and bought Kyle seconds. The Dogman threw that 120-pound hound like he weighed nothing. Jake came back. The creature turned toward Kyle again. Jake attacked again. The creature threw him again. On the 3rd charge, Jake got his jaws into the creature's leg. Kyle heard the bite land. Then the monster grabbed Jake with both hands and threw him into the trees. Kyle heard branches breaking as Jake's body went through them. He thought Jake was dead. Kyle kept running, but the forest betrayed him. He tripped and fell into a fallen treetop, tangled in limbs, unable to get free. The creature came down on him. Its face was inches away. Kyle could smell its breath. Rotten meat, vomit, death. Its teeth snapped close enough that Kyle could feel the air move. And then in desperation, he screamed for Jake.
Come on, old Jake, come on. I need you. Come on, where you at? Come on, I need you. Help me, help. Come on.
Even though he believed Jake was gone. From the dark, old Jake came back one more time. He hit the creature broadside. Dog and monster rolled into the leaves. Kyle heard bones break. He did not know whose. He did not wait to find out. He scrambled out of the treetop and ran for the clearing near the truck. When he got close enough, he fired all 6 shots from his rifle into the air. Then silence. Not peace. Silence. The kind that feels like the woods are holding their breath. Kyle reached the truck and told his grandfather what happened. They left a jacket behind, hoping somehow, if Jake was alive, he could find his way back to it. The next morning they returned. Nothing. Then later, out of the brush, came a red shape. Not Bo. Jake. Alive, but destroyed. His ears were shredded, his chest was torn open, his nose was hanging, his tail was gone, his hip was fractured. But old Jake had made it home. Kyle's family nursed him back, and somehow that dog lived until 2009, reaching 16 years old. Kyle believes Jake saved his life 4 times that night. And this is where the story stops being only a monster story. Because yes, there is terror here. There is the image of something gray and blood-mouthed rising from behind an oak tree. There is the smell of rot and vomit in the dark. But there is also a dog who should have run and did not. A dog who saw something no animal should have to face and chose his boy anyway. Some creatures stalk. Some creatures charge. Some seem to warn you first.
And in our second story, the warning was not subtle. It came from a tree that started moving like it was alive. Story 2, The Iowa Woods Nightmare, a Sasquatch encounter in Volga.
March 2007, Volga, Iowa. Late winter. The kind of cold that does not just sit on your skin. It gets under your sleeves, into your fingers, into your joints. Patrick had gone to Volga to help his girlfriend's family move out of an old farmhouse. They were being evicted, and they had only 24 hours to get everything out. This was not a planned camping trip, not a ghost hunt, not a bunch of people wandering around looking for monsters. It was a stressful, exhausting move in freezing weather. Patrick got there around 4 in the afternoon. There was snow on the ground. The temperature dropped toward 25 degrees. The group worked for hours, hauling furniture, boxes, and whatever they could save. To keep everyone going, Patrick bought pizza and beer. Eventually, the women went inside the farmhouse. They turned on the radio and started organizing rooms. Patrick and another man stayed outside. They built a bonfire. Not a small one, a massive one. They dragged dead trees and fallen limbs from a nearby draw. They poured gas over the pile and set it off. Flames climbed 7 or 8 feet into the night. The fire was hot enough to push back the cold, hot enough to make the darkness around it look even darker. But 2 or 3 in the morning, Patrick was exhausted. He stood near a picnic table with 1 foot up on the bench. His beer had been tucked into a snowdrift to keep cold. He was about to take a drink. And then the tree behind the fire came alive. About 20 yards away stood a huge oak. Suddenly, massive limbs began whipping up and down, not shaking in the wind, whipping. Limbs thick as a man's waist slammed against each other. Bark exploded off the tree. Branches rose into the black where Patrick could not see them. Then came hammering back down near the fire. Something was in that tree. Something strong enough to make an oak look fragile. Then came the roar. Patrick described it as unholy. Not a bear, not a cougar, not a drunk man in the woods. A deep, violent sound that seemed to come from a giant stomach and pass straight through his chest. He said it vibrated his organs. He compared it to hearing a Bengal tiger roar at close range, and said the tiger was nothing compared to this. What he felt in that moment was not ordinary fear. It was older than that. Prehistoric fear. The kind of fear that lives in the part of the human brain that remembers when darkness had teeth. Just beyond the firelight, he saw the outline. A mammoth figure, standing upright, around 10 feet tall. Wide, impossibly wide, broader than his Toyota truck. It gripped the tree and tore at it, silhouetted by the bonfire, the firelight catching the edges of its hair. The man beside Patrick froze. His eyes went wide. He began to panic and tried to run the wrong way. Patrick grabbed him and forced him toward the house. They sprinted for the back door. Inside, they did not feel safe. That matters, because a house should feel like rescue. A locked door should mean the danger stays outside. But Patrick looked at that old farmhouse and understood something awful. If that creature wanted in, the walls would not stop it. They shoved a refrigerator in front of the door. The women inside had heard nothing. The radio had covered the roar. They laughed it off at first. Maybe it was a coyote. Maybe the men were drunk. Maybe they were exaggerating. Patrick was not laughing. He told them nobody was going outside until daylight. When morning came, he did not go looking for footprints. He did not want hair samples. He did not want evidence for a debate. He wanted to see the tree. The oak was damaged badly. Fresh bark was everywhere. The smell of raw wood hung in the cold air. The core of the tree had been cracked and twisted. Patrick climbed into the back of his truck to reach the height where the creature had been grabbing the limbs. Even standing in the truck, he could barely reach. The implication was clear. Whatever tore that tree apart was not human. This part of the episode needs a careful line, because according to wildlife science, no confirmed North American primate matching Sasquatch has been recognized by mainstream biology. That is the official position. But witness reports do exist. Thousands of them, across decades, across regions, and many witnesses describe the same patterns. Tree breaks, rock throwing, deep vocalizations, the sense of being watched, and displays of dominance meant to drive people away. That is what Patrick believed he saw. Not a gentle forest spirit, not a misunderstood animal, a territorial thing that wanted them gone, and it made sure they understood. In Kentucky, the creature charged. In Iowa, it warned. But in Alaska, the story changes again. Because in Alaska, the old warnings were already there. Do not whistle in the woods. Do not follow voices. Do not chase the sound of children laughing, because something may be calling you, and it may not be human.
Story 3. Real hairy man encounters in the Alaska wilderness.
Fred Roll was born in 1975 and grew up in the Bristol Bay region of Alaska. He is a Kuriyoung tribal council member from Dillingham, Alaska, and according to his own subarctic Alaska Sasquatch site, his work is focused on recording and reporting Alaskan hairy man encounters. When Fred was a boy, the elders warned him, "Do not whistle in the woods. Do not follow the sound of children laughing unless you know exactly who it is. Stay close. Listen, the hairy man will steal children. The hairy man will eat them." Like a lot of kids, Fred thought these were scare stories. Then came 1983. He was 8 years old building a tree fort near his grandmother's house, about 150 yards from safety. He saw something in the alders. At first, he thought it was his Uncle Leo, tall, dark, standing still. But then he realized the figure was taller than the willows. Too tall. Around 70 yards away, the shape began swaying back and forth. Then it screamed. Fred ran. That was the moment the old stories stopped being stories. Later that same year, his family went to Moose Camp along the Nushagak River. They used a large fishing boat as a base and took a smaller skiff out for hunting. At one point, the boat got stuck on a gravel bar near Angel Bay, and they had to wait for the tide. Then the screaming started. Adults yelled for the children to get inside. Fred was pulled into the wheelhouse. Through the window, up on a bluff about 60 yards away, he saw a massive dark figure. It screamed. Then it threw rocks. One rock tore through a heavy tarp and knocked over a moose quarter. Then came gunshots. More screams. More rocks hitting the boat. That was Fred's second lesson. Whatever this was, it was not just passing through. It could be territorial, and it could weaponize the land itself. But the encounter that truly marked him happened in 2006. Fred, his uncle, and his cousin went on a gold panning trip to a remote area near the Nuyakuk River. This was deep wilderness, the kind of remote where help is not minutes away. It is not even an hour away. It is a world away. They stayed in a small plywood shack once used for counting salmon. 8 feet by 8 feet, 2 small windows, a thin door with a hook lock, a wooden box in the middle of nowhere. 30 minutes after dark, the shack creaked. Not like settling wood, like something heavy had leaned into it. Fred saw movement past the window. He grabbed a shotgun and a powerful spotlight. He and his cousin opened the door, just enough to step 1 foot outside. They turned on the light. 3 sets of eyes stared back, high off the ground, like fence post reflectors, and they did not run. Fred and his cousin got back inside and locked the door. Then the room changed. Fred described pressure, a physical pressure, like being in an airplane when your ears need to pop. His cousin collapsed under a table, shaking and incoherent. Fred looked toward the window near the riverbank. A face filled it. The window was only 18 inches tall, and he could see only part of the creature's face, from the bottom of the nose to the top of the brow. The eyes were black like marble, about a foot apart. The skin looked gray like wet cement, deeply wrinkled. The nose was broad and flat. The brow was heavy, ancient. Fred said when it looked at him, he felt like food, not like a man being watched by an animal, like prey being assessed. Fred fired his shotgun 3 times through the wall. Outside, something screamed. The sound was so powerful that a pot of stew on the stove began ringing like a tuning fork. Then the shack shifted. Something had hit it. For hours, the men were trapped. Fred's cousin was mentally gone. His uncle shut down. Fred stayed by the door, pumping a Coleman lantern, trying to keep light in the room while keeping his weapon ready. Outside, the creatures moved around the shack. At times, it sounded like rotor wash from a helicopter beating against the ground. Then rocks began hitting the building like hail. As dawn approached, they tried to make a plan. They used the spotlight again. Behind a small outhouse stood something Fred estimated at 14 feet tall. Not tall. Impossible. He described it as cartoon big. The spotlight did not reflect from it. No eye shine, no shine from hair. Just a massive black void standing in the trees. Eventually, they knew they had to run. They went for the skiff. As Fred helped his uncle into the boat, a rock the size of a basketball came past his face and hit the river with a crack like a gunshot. Fred saw a black silhouette coming from the trees. He fired 3 rifle rounds into the center of its chest. He heard the rounds hit one by one. The figure stopped, but it did not fall. They pushed off, starting the engine, and the current helped pull them away while rocks continued slamming into the boat, denting metal and cracking the engine cover. Fred survived. But survival was not the same as walking away unchanged. The trauma damaged relationships between the men. It followed him, and now he researches and records encounters because he believes people need to be warned. This is also where science and folklore start circling each other. Bergman's rule, broadly stated, says animals in colder climates often trend larger because bigger bodies conserve heat more efficiently. Scientific discussions of the rule are complex, but the basic principle is widely recognized in biology. Infrasound is also real. Low-frequency sound can create pressure sensations, unease, discomfort, and fear responses in some circumstances, although claims about extreme biological effects should be treated carefully. A 2025 review notes that high-intensity infrasound-rich environments can produce psychological distress and other effects, while other research has linked low-frequency sound to fear, unease, and physical discomfort. Does that prove Fred encountered the hairy man? No. But it does give language to parts of his story. The pressure, the dread, the sense that his body was reacting before his mind could understand why. So what do we do with stories like these? Kyle in Kentucky, saved by old Jake. Patrick in Iowa, watching an oak tree get torn apart in the firelight. Fred in Alaska, staring into black marble eyes through an 18-inch window while something outside made the air feel wrong. Skeptics will say these are misidentifications. Believers will say these are warnings. And maybe the most honest place to stand is right in the middle of that dark road, with the trees on both sides admitting this much. People are seeing something. They are hearing something. And in the deepest parts of the wilderness where the maps thin out and the old stories get older, there are still things we do not fully understand. Maybe these creatures are flesh and blood. Maybe they are folklore wearing muscle and teeth. Maybe the elders were never trying to scare children. Maybe they were trying to keep them alive. So the next time you are in the woods and everything suddenly goes quiet, listen. If something throws a rock from the tree line, leave. If something screams from the dark, do not answer. And if you ever feel watched by something you cannot see, trust that feeling. Because not everything stays in the shadows. Thank you for stepping into this story with me. If you have a case, an experience, or something you think deserves to be heard, send it in. You can reach me at studiosinisterpod@gmail.com. The Studio Sinister call-in line is now live. If you've experienced something or have a story you've never been able to explain, you can leave a message at www.speakpipe.com/thesinistersignal. You'll also find the link in our show notes of every episode and in our bio on Instagram and X. Tell your story. You never know who else has experienced the same thing. And don't forget to follow Studio Sinister on social media to stay up to date on new episode, clips, and everything coming next. Because the stories don't stop when the episode ends. And sometimes they follow you.